So as we look at the social web, let me start with visitors down the bottom left. Visitors are certainly the fuel for growth. The next step in their life cycle is to convert them into users, build deeper engagement with them such that the users actually contribute both insight about themselves, insight about content, actually contribute content beyond that themselves. Ideally, with the output from that being sharing and distributing content across the web, and rolling up back into ultimately a viral effect that drives more visitors. And this is a cycle that ideally in a healthy environment is going to repeat itself over and over again and drive growth. And as you think about it's also interesting to think about some of the different roles in here that users might play. They're probably very different users with respect to the ones that are the contributors and of different types, but then there's also the sharing aspect that drives that viral impact. So there's kind of a lot of very dynamic things going on in this cycle. And we've also, I believe, need to start thinking about revenue in a little bit different way as well. CPM is a model that's very much an impression-based pricing model. And I would put forward that revenue per user is actually a metric that perhaps maybe more appropriately reflects the social web and the need to monetize users within a community. And also reflecting the fact that we're no longer just selling advertising. We have or at least not impression-based advertising. Certainly there will be impression-based advertising going forward, and lots of it. But we'll also have pay-per-click models, pay-per-action models. There'll be lead revenues, lead generation revenues, and even direct sales and merchandise. And as you think about this, it's really users times revenue per user, which equals the total revenue, and that engagement piece, which is I think a big driver of effective RPU within a community. So there's a recursive process or cycle that these communities engage in, which drives the revenue. And all of that, to me, begs that the need for rethinking, as we look at the performance measures that we use to evaluate how we're doing online and how effective our development projects are. We need to start rethinking the way in which we we set up our measures and look at the dynamic nature of this recursive process, so we can start evaluating how does it grow and change over time. And if we look at social media, effectively all of this should lead to a social media return on investment. And we put together here a little graphic, which just is an illustration of what we're talking about here, where you've got cumulative cash flow per user on the left. At the top it's positive, at the bottom it's negative. Time is along the bottom axis. And as you can see, the dark line, which is effectively cash flow per user, that's in the early days it dips down and then climbs over time. And I put a little equation up here, which is just to decipher the cumulative revenue per user minus the cumulative cost per user, and that nets us with the cash flow per user. And ideally, if we can figure out this unit model, we can understand in the investment periods, what's required to attract and bring a visitor in and convert them into a user. And then as they mature and as the revenue with respect to that user grows, we can start to see when that user turns cash flow positive, and how that grows over time. And it's really this in effect is a unit model for the social media world. Where you can start to think about what's the investment to get this user and what does it take to move them along. And as I start putting in place essentially timed cohorts of users, so users who join my community this month, what kind of cost is associated with them going forward, and what sort of revenue is associated with them, and the same next month. And if I look at each of these cohorts as tranches of users that join the community, what kind of cumulative investment is going to be required in terms of negative cash flow, and then what's it going to require in terms of the yield that's going to bring, and what's the timing of those cash flows, and both the negative ones and the positive ones. And this is a particularly important part as we start thinking about ongoing investment in the space. As venture money comes in, and even corporate money comes in, whether it be building new communities or extending old communities, the same kind of thinking needs to take place, because effectively this is we're kind of building a different business model, one that's much more based upon community, and therefore thinking about user economics becomes much more central to evaluating success over time. And that's where we end up today. If you have suggestions, comments, or feedback, you can drop us a comment at digitalpodcast.com/podcastnews, or you can send feedback directly to digitalpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit us at Digital Podcast and find out more about what we're doing at Digital Podcast by visiting digitalpodcast.com/podcastnews. And we hope that this opens up the conversation. By no means are we trying to have a conclusive, definitive answer to what is social media performance management. But I believe it's an important topic, and I believe it's one that the social web is prepared to engage in, and one that with some collective effort we can build some frameworks that help us manage the social web much more effectively. This is Alex Nesbitt from Digital Podcast. Thanks for listening today.